All right, so let's talk about adjacent angles. If we're looking at adjacent angles, these are ones that have the same vertex. So they have this same point here. That's what they're talking about. And they share a common side. So we've got one common side, but they don't overlap. So notice that angle 1 doesn't have any part over angle 2. They share a point and that line in between. Those are known as adjacent angles. Adjacent just means it's beside, it's next to. So, I mean, you know, you have chairs that are adjacent to each other. You're sitting next to you, adjacent to your friend, probably. Okay? So, understand a couple things. If I take the entire angle, so we're saying if I have angle ABC, so we're talking about this whole angle here, that is equal to angle 1 plus angle 2. Okay, so let's just review that, just make sure we understand. This angle here is equal to this angle plus this angle. That's what they're saying. Those are known as adjacent angles. Now let's go on, and we can have, these are what we're going to talk about next, are all adjacent angles, but they have another special name. And so the first one is complementary. And anything, when we have adjacent angles that add up to be 90 degrees, those are complementary. So in this example here, angle ABD, so if we take this angle, angle ABD, and we take angle DBC, and we add them up, one's 50, one's 40, that totals 90. Those are complementary. So complementary angles total to be 90 degrees. Supplementary angles are very similar, except that they total 180 degrees. So when you get done with those two, if you put those two together, you're going to get a line. So I'm going to get something like this. So this angle is supplementary with that angle because you can see that I get a line, 180 degrees on there. So those are our terms. So we've got a lot of different terms here up to this point, and that's the tough part, is keeping all these things separated here because there's so many terms, and you've got to kind of keep an eye on these. All right, so let's take a look at example. It says classify each angle or angle pair using all names that apply. And so if we look at angle 1, well, what do we know? Angle 1 is greater than 90 degrees. Okay, so we know that. So if it's greater than 90 degrees, it must be an obtuse angle. There's nothing else. This is just an angle. Okay. On number 2, there's two angles. We got angle 1 and angle 2. They are adjacent because they're right next to each other and they share a common point and a common line. Okay. They have the same vertex. Therefore, like I said, they're adjacent. They also total, they give you a straight line. So therefore, they are supplementary. So we have adjacent and supplementary. All right, would you please try these right here? Identify each angle or angle pair and put in all the names that you know apply. All right, welcome back. Hopefully, you got all these figured out. And in this one, you should see there's a 90-degree angle, so this is a right angle. Hopefully you figured out that 30 and 60 add together to be 90, therefore this is complementary. And on these, you can see that they are opposite of each other, so these are vertical angles. So that's what you should be unable to figure out from those things. Okay, so now what we want to be able to do is take our information that we know and be able to calculate something from a missing angle, figure out things that we know based on those things that we had. Now guys, if you need to go back and watch those sections again, do it. This is what this is designed to be. All right, so let's take a look at this. We want to figure out what x is. Well, what do we know? We know that we've got a 90-degree angle right here. And we know that we've got two angles that are adjacent. They add up to be 90. Therefore, that's a complementary angle. But we can figure out, well, if one angle, the total is 90, and one is 65, I can figure out my other one simply by subtracting it. And so x is going to equal 25. So because we know they're going to be 90 degrees. All right, let's see if you guys can do these. Do D and E. All right, so hopefully you have these done in your notes. You should have looked at that and said, oh, look, there's a straight line. That's 180 degrees. So I know that the total all the way across here, 180. So I should get 180 minus 38 equals 142 degrees. Or this one, you said, hey, these are vertical angles. And whatever this angle is, this angle is. So I don't even have to think. I can just write down that's going to be 150. All right. Let's skip a part here. Yep. Okay. The next part says, let's talk about perpendicular lines. If we have lines that intersect at 90 degrees, so here's one line, here's another line, I've got a 90-degree angle between them. If those are known as perpendicular, and we would use this little symbol right there, that little kind of upside down T, to indicate that. So I would say that line M is perpendicular to line N. Okay? Now, there's another unique set of lines. If these two lines are drawn in such a way that they never cross, these will go on forever and ever and ever, then these are known as parallel. And we would write that like this. We would say line P is parallel to line Q. Kind of a big, two long slashes there to indicate that. So perpendicular lines, parallel lines. More the terms. Stop the tape, put those in your notes. Okay, another big term here, transversal. Okay, if we have a line that intersects two or more other lines, in other words, here's my line number 1, here's line number 2, and I have this line that intersects all of those. That would be known as a transversal. So a transversal is a line that intersects all those. And from that, you get 8 different angles. You got 4 here and 4 more there. And there are some special things about those different angles that we're going to talk about, especially if that transversal cuts through parallel lines. And that's what we're going to talk about. And that's what they're showing you down here. Here's my transversal. Here's my parallel lines. And so those are, we're going to take a look at those. So let's talk about some special things that go along with parallel lines and transversal. Okay, first is something known as alternate interior angles. Alternate interior angles are ones, now let's think about this. Alternate would be the opposite, interior, the inside. So we're looking for ones that are opposite but inside. So 2 and 8 are known as alternate interior angles. They are inside these parallel lines, so they're inside here, and they're opposite, they're alternate. They're on other sides of this line. So 2 and 8. Give me another example of alternate interior angles. Give me 2 other angles. If you said 3 and 5, you were right. 3 and 5 are also alternate interior angles. Okay, so that was alternate interior. Now let's do alternate exterior. So opposite, but on the outside now. So what we're looking at here, our example would be number 4 and number 6. Opposite, but on the outside, on the exterior. Give me another example of alternate exterior angles. Hopefully you said 1 and 7. 1 and 7 would also be examples of alternate interior angles. And the last one, let's take a look at corresponding angles. Corresponding angles are those that are in the same position on the 2 lines in relationship to the transversal. Okay, now let's figure out what are they talking about here. Okay, so they're talking about angle 3 and angle 7. So notice that these are both to the right of the parallel lines and both below the transverse lines. That's what they're talking about. So those correspond. They are kind of the same. Instead of being alternate, opposites, they are the same. That's what they're talking about by corresponding angles. Okay? Corresponding angles. So 3 and 7 are also corresponding angles. Give me another set of corresponding angles. Now on this one, you could have given me a lot. There's several of them. 1 and 5 are corresponding angles. 4 and 8, or 2 and 6. All of those are examples of corresponding angles. Now, all of those things that we talked about, every single one, alternate interior, alternate exterior, and corresponding, notice that these were all congruent. Okay? They are all the same. So what we're saying is, I know, for instance, alternate interior, I know that angle 2 is the same angle as angle 8. I know, due to alternate exterior, that angle 4 is the same angle as angle 6. And I know that angle, due to corresponding angles, that angle, well, let's do angle 1 is the same as angle 5. So there are a lot of things that we can figure out based on all of this stuff. My suggestion is at this point that you make sure you have all of this stuff in your notes and that it all makes sense to you. And if it doesn't, go back over it again. These are such crucial terms that you need to know them. All right, let's take a look at this last example here. You're a carpenter and you're building a bench for a picnic table. The top of the bench will be parallel to the ground. So guess what we have? We have parallel lines. That's good. If the measure of angle 1 is 148 degrees, find the measure of angle 2 and angle 3. Now here's the key thing for you to understand. Okay, we've got the two parallel lines. We've got our transversal line that goes through there. So we have all of those things. So let's take a look. What do we have? What type of angle do we have between angle 1 and angle 2? Okay. Notice that they are on the inside of the parallel lines and they're one's on the left and one's on the right. That makes them alternate interior angles. Alternate interior. So if angle 1 is 148, angle 2 is also 148. And if you know that this is a straight line, and these two angles are adjacent angles, angle 3 and angle 2 are adjacent, you know that the total of this right here is going to be 180. So 180 minus 148 would be, what is that, 32. So angle 3 has to be 32 degrees. All right, your turn. Figure out these. Last thing to do, put them in your notes. Okay. Hopefully, if you figured out for F, you've got measure of angle 2 and measure of angle 1, and they are corresponding angles, therefore they are the same. So this angle would be 63 degrees. If you look at measure of angle 3, measure of angle 8, they look like they are on the exterior and they're opposite, so they're alternate exterior angles, and those also are the same, so that would be also 100 degrees. And measure of angle 4 and measure of angle 7, they look like they are going to be supplementary. So if one is 82, the other one is 180 minus 82, or 98 degrees. All right, there you go. Do not be afraid on this section, if this doesn't make sense, to go back and review this. This is different stuff. You got to think a lot differently than what we've been doing. So take and review it if necessary.